Welcome to the Office Latte podcast, where we go beyond the boardroom to explore new conversations on life and career. I'm Erin Kennedy, CEO of Professional Resume Services and wife, mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and friend. Now, let's dive in. Good morning, Summer.
Good morning, Erin. How's it going?
It is great. It is great. I'm on my second cup of coffee. Look at my cute Christmas mug. Isn't that cute?
Oh, I love yours. Mine's
I got this at Joanne.
green. Oh, you got it at Joann's, you said?
Yes, I know. It's so cute. And it's like the perfect size. You know, if they're too big, they bug me. If they're too small, what good is that? But anyways, I'm still nursing my and it's 12:30, but enough of talking to me. I am so excited today because we have on somebody that really I've wanted to talk to for a long time. He's a negotiation coach, which, you know, I don't know if it's for being from the Midwest, but I don't feel that I'm very good at that. I know you are because you're just sharp and young and savvy, but I am like, oh, you're right. No, you're right. I'll just pay full price.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. I know. I'm terrible.
I feel like I got my negotiation skills from you. So maybe it's like I'm not confrontational, and then the actual like grit of it, which I know John will get into, like of the real tactics or the real ways you can say that. I feel like you taught me that. So that combined with just I'm okay with being confrontational.
I am just all talk, no action.
It's not true. No, I think you are so naturally. You're so naturally, I think, good at negotiating. You don't even realize you're doing it. Like, I think that's where you are. Like, you just naturally negotiate and don't even realize it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't feel like that in my head. Although when my youngest son, we had to get him a new car because some person who was texting ran into him and totaled his car, but he was good. Thank God. So that was good. But I did use a little bit of negotiating skills in the car thing. But you know, as far as jobs, I mean, this is something that comes up with our clients all the time, and it's scary. And I get it because everything is on the line, especially, you know, when I'm talking to somebody and this is like their dream job, you know, but it also has to have their dream salary, you know, so that they can still put food on the table and save a little bit of money or whatever it is they want to do. But so, and this is, you know, I bought John's book. I'm just going to plug it because I love it. It's Act Your Wage by John Gates. And it is really good. I mean, it's a great read and it really touches on all those things that I've, you know, studied as far as trying to help clients and things that clients have asked me, but it is a great book. So, you know, I'm just excited we get to talk to him in person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's so smart. And like you said, like it's always high stakes. And I think that's so important, whether you like have kids or whether you own a home or whether you're fresh out of college and or whether you have like 3 offers on the table or only one. It's always high stakes. It can feel different, obviously, but it's always high stakes. And so it's so important to learn not only negotiating tips, but really the language around it. Because sometimes negotiating is through email. It's not face to face. It's not over the phone. Sometimes it's simply an email. And I think knowing how
that's not great either, because sometimes our tone can come off as like, I'm nervous. But I mean, I always reread every single email because then I'll go, oh no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this, you know, or even my text, which sometimes, you know, then I have to back up and like retext and say, I wasn't really meaning that. But anyways, he talks about, you know, how you talk about it and how you ask and all of those things make such a huge difference. So, so I'm excited to talk to him and see what he has to say because I have a lot of questions. And actually last week I did a LinkedIn post and asked people what they wanted to know and what they wanted to hear from him. So I did get questions. So I'm excited to kind of dive into those too. Without further ado, let's talk to John. Hey, John, so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate being invited. It's great to be here.
I'm glad we were able to talk today. This is one of my favorite topics, and it's one that we get asked about so often. I mean, anybody in the career industry, coaches, resume writers, this is one of the most sensitive topics, one of the worst topics, one of the most, anxiety inducing topics. So I was thrilled that you were coming on and bought your book. Oh my goodness. I was thinking, because I was telling my husband about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many good tips. And because I have 2 kids in college right now, and I was, I've been kind of explaining it to them, and they're still at that point where they're like, oh, never going to negotiate, they're like really worried about it. But anyways, so tell me how you got into this, because you didn't start as a negotiation coach. So give us a little bit of your background.
It's an interesting story. So I started off as a recruiter. I actually wanted to be a financial analyst when I was going to college, so I majored in finance and business management. I double majored. And I had a job actually all lined up with a tech company in Portland, Oregon, to be a financial analyst right out of college, and I was so excited. But 3 weeks before I was supposed to start, I got a message from that company saying they had rescinded all outstanding offers.
Oh, kidding.
So here I was with a newborn son
Oh no.
and no job and graduating college, wondering what the heck I'm going to do in a really soft economy. It was very scary. So I just started banging on doors and networking like crazy. And I finally found a job working for a temporary agency. And they hired me because I had a degree and I could speak Spanish and I looked good in a suit. That was it. They wanted somebody to go out to Hillsboro, Oregon, which was heavily Hispanic at that time, and recruit people who did not speak English and send them out to work assignments. And so that's how I got my start in recruiting. But Erin, I was starving to death. My first salary out of college was $16,000 a year, and I was trying to make it on that.
Yeah.
And so I struggled financially for about 5 years in that industry, and then finally got a great corporate recruiting job with one of my clients. It was a tech manufacturing company, and I was a technical recruiter working on technical recs in the temp service business. So I got started really fast and they really liked me. And it was a great fit for about 3.5 years until the marketing department made a terrible mistake and brought a whole generation of products to the market that were mismatched. Sales took a dive, and I learned my first hard lesson as a recruiter. If you pick that as your specialty, you're vulnerable to layoffs
If you pick, what is
because
your specialty? Products? Oh,
recruiting.
recruiting. Okay.
Yeah, because you're responsible for making the company bigger.
Yeah.
And so if the company ever decides it's time to get smaller, it doesn't make sense to keep you around. They can always bring in more recruiters later. So I got laid off 6 months after buying my first house. My
Oh
finances had
no.
finally started to stabilize. By this time, I had 2 very young children to support, and I was scared. So, uh, if you're listening to this and you're in between and you're scared, I get you. I've
Yep.
been there.
So do
Um,
I. So do I.
so I was desperate. I got a really small severance package and I was trying to figure out how I was going to avoid losing my house. So I cast the resume to the 4 winds, and I had been a recruiter by this time for 8 years.
Oh
And
wow.
so I started getting the questions from all over the country. John, what's your salary requirement? What's it going to take financially for you to move to Louisiana or Chicago in the middle of winter or something like that?
Right.
And I realized I had been asking this question for years, every day for years. But when somebody asks it from me, I'm completely unprepared to answer the question. I didn't know how. And I felt like there's no winning in this. I'm going to give them a number that's too big and they won't call me in to interview, or I'm going to give them a
Right.
number that's too
Right.
small to get the interview, and now I just cut my own throat. That bothered me. But I finally ended up getting a job with Capital One Financial in Richmond, Virginia. I moved from
Okay.
Oregon to Richmond. I was a senior IT recruiter and team leader for them during the Y2K thing, and that was a
All
real wild
right.
ride.
That was the whole thing. Yeah.
But that was the most difficult interview process I'd ever been through. Tons of interviews, 3 tests, a business case interview. I
Yeah, I
was
read
told
about that in
after,
your book. That
yeah,
was crazy. That was pretty intense.
yep. I was
Wow.
told that after the fact that they decline 90% of people that they interview, and they do that on
Yeah.
purpose because they want to hire like the cream of the cream. So after that, I'm like, after I'm done interviewing, I'm sitting there in the interview room wondering if, if a firing squad's going to come in. In comes the recruiter and he sits down, and his name was Chip. And he said, John, I'm just going to level with you here. Uh, we've interviewed over 20 people for this. Only 2 have passed the process. You're one of them, and the other guy just withdrew. So what's it going to take to get you to say yes and move out here from Oregon?
Yeah.
And suddenly I had something I'd never ever had before, a giant pile of leverage that I didn't really
Leverage.
know.
Yeah. And I love how you talk about that in your book because so many people forget about that. But anyways, go on.
Hmm. Yeah,
This is
yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
So I
So
had the
what did you
balance
do?
of power kind of shifted to me
Yeah.
right there. And so I said, I want a better salary. I want a better incentive plan. I want a better relocation plan. I want a signing bonus. And within about 5 seconds, he said yes to all of these things. And I
Wow.
was excited. I flew home, shared the news with my family. But for the next 3 years at Capital One, it was itching my brain, Erin. I couldn't help but wonder how much money I just left on the table because they said yes so fast. And
Right.
that kind of led me into doing things like I started monitoring how much money candidates are leaving on the table. And I use this as a bit of layoff self-defense. So if I got an offer approved and I could go up to 185,000 on the offer and use a $10,000 signing bonus if needed. Now, if I closed at 172, that's like $8,000. If it was 180 was the top, that would be
Right.
$8,000 of saved salary plus 10,000 on signing. So I set a goal to save my annual salary in negotiation savings every month. And I was able to do that actually. And I started showing that to my boss, and they said, well, this is pretty cool. Why don't you train all the other recruiters? So over the course of my career, I have trained hundreds of recruiters on how to negotiate with candidates from the other side. And eventually I rose up to be the head of recruiting for multiple Fortune 500s and was responsible for overseeing at least 75,000 job offers during my career. So I like to think that now that I'm coaching candidates on how to get through the offer process with their skin still on,
Yeah.
I'm like the prosecutor who has become the defense attorney. I have shifted to the other side of the table. A few
Yeah.
years ago, I thought, well, I wonder if I've got a business here because I've been helping friends and family for years doing this for free and seeing great results with them. But I wondered if I could help people that I had never met.
Right.
And so I did a pilot about 3 years ago. I went out to LinkedIn and I found 10 people who were in job hunt, and I said, "Let me help you for free. Let's see, let's see what kind of results we can produce together, working together on your next offer." And so the results were pretty interesting. Out of those 10 people, there was one that was a nine or $10,000 gain. There was one that was in the mid $50,000 gain, and everyone else was in between those two numbers.
Wow.
And all the stuff that I knew about people leaving money on the table was true. I just proved that I could help people get a lot more money safely without putting the offer at risk.
Right.
And I thought this
Yeah.
is
Because
something
that's
that the
huge.
world really needs.
Yes.
So,
It is.
so
It
that's
really,
how I
really
got
is.
started.
Wow. That's amazing. And so along the way, you just kind of really realized that negotiating was your sweet spot and where you excelled. And yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I've always
Love
been
that.
a strong collaborator, and I think that helps too. You mentioned your son earlier. He says, "I don't want to negotiate," kind of backs
Yeah,
away
he's
with
just kind of
this
like,
like
ugh, what?
fear
But
look
yeah,
on his face, and that's because I think most people think negotiation is something that it doesn't have to be.
right.
And I can explain that if you'd like.
Yeah. And
Um,
also I was just going to say, I saw a LinkedIn post today. Someone in the careers industry had talked about, how often do you negotiate? And I was shocked when so many people said that they didn't, and I said, they expect you to. So that's something else. Is it expected? I mean, you were a recruiter. Don't you expect candidates to negotiate, or were you shocked when they did, or were you surprised, or,
Yeah. Well,
what
it
was your
depends.
response? Huh?
It depends. Some
Yeah.
companies have a no negotiation approach. They're going to make their best and final offer right up front. And if
Okay.
that's the case, the recruiter's probably already prepped you for that and said, we make final offers. This is non-negotiable. This is it. Take it or leave it. But even in those cases, sometimes it is still somewhat minorly negotiable. So I wouldn't even accept that. But most of the time during my recruiting career, to save time, when I'm getting an offer approved, I pre-approve negotiating room. And most experienced corporate recruiters will do this. They'll, instead of getting an offer approved, pitching that offer, now if there's negotiation, they have to go back and get the offer reapproved.
Yeah.
That's a slowing down of the process. So to keep things smooth, I just get negotiating room built into that approval. And
yeah, I mean, to me, that would make sense.
That's how I know that most people are leaving money on the table. Now, when I was tracking this, 80% of the people that I extended offers to did not negotiate at all. 80%. The other 20%, I'd say 10% negotiated effectively and got something. Maybe they still left something on the table, but I would say they negotiated and they got something.
Yeah.
The other 10% negotiated disastrously. They botched it somehow. They tried to do it, and it's those horror stories get out into the world. And
tell me an example of botching it. Tell me an example of botching it, like what people do.
The most common example, I think that's a good one. The most common example is when somebody shows up to the negotiation process as a different person than the one that they interviewed.
How so?
Well, they come at it more aggressively. They come at it divisively. They're not collaborating. They are demanding. They're arrogant. Things like that. So during the interview process, they were nice as pie. And the hiring manager is thinking, I want this person on my team. They're going to solve all my problems. I think they would fit with the customers. They would fit with the rest of the team. So personality fit is a big thing that hiring managers consider. They are also terrified of making a hiring mistake. Hiring managers do not want to hire the wrong person, because if they do, they look bad in front of the team, in front of their customers, in front of everybody. So they're really careful about this. So then once they extend an offer, if the personality changes, it makes them reassess their decision about this person.
I get that. I mean, I don't blame them. Suddenly you have this like sort of hostile person, which I was thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking that's probably like a defense maneuver, or, they're like, maybe deep down they're worried, and they're kind of being super assertive.
Yeah, Erin, to some degree, I think people are told that to negotiate your pay, you have to stand up for yourself. You get that advice everywhere. It's all over LinkedIn. If you Google it, it'll say, do your research and insist upon your worth and stuff like that. And when people read those words, they think they have to strap on a suit of armor and walk into an arena and cross swords with somebody. They think it's a competition and a win-lose conversation. And so if they think that's who they have to be to get what they want, then they become that person.
Right.
And so with my clients, I teach them to be your natural self through the process, to collaborate. In fact, if you follow the salary coach method, you're going to strengthen your relationships on the way in, not damage them. And so there have been many times when hiring managers say, John, Erin showed up to the negotiation as a completely different person. Now I'm having second thoughts. What should I do?
Yeah.
And in some cases, that just robs them of sleep, and they end up withdrawing the offer, and they blame the money conversation for that. And in other cases, sometimes people will move the goalposts. So they'll ask for something, they'll get a concession, and then they'll come back later and they'll say, you know what about this? And they'll get a concession, and then they'll come back later and they'll ask for something else and they'll get a concession. not knowing that the hiring manager is going back to get approvals on everything, and it just makes them look silly. And so there's a way that you need to interact at the offer stage to protect your offer that I teach clients.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the salary coach method in a little bit. But so why do even top executives struggle to negotiate their value? I mean, you would think, because, we work with clients who are the CEOs of companies and it does surprise me sometimes. I get it, maybe imposter syndrome, whatever. They don't see what they do as valuable, but it always does surprise me when senior level executives struggle with this. So how do you, why is this, and how do you help them see their value?
Sure. Well, I think the thing that holds everybody back, regardless of your level, whether you're a new college graduate or a senior executive, is fear of the process. So mostly it's fear of loss. So at the phone screen stage, when they're asking you how much money you want to make, and you know that your answer is going to determine if you're going to go through the interview process or not, you're afraid of losing the chance to interview. So that pushes your number down. At the offer stage, you're afraid that you're going to offend somebody if you poke at the offer. And so you're afraid they're going to yank the offer, because that would be the worst disaster of all.
Right. Yes.
Now, when you are a top executive, getting an offer is harder to do than at other stages of your career.
So much more complicated. So time consuming.
The selection process is difficult. It often includes deep assessments. It's really difficult because the stakes are so high for these companies. They want to make sure they're getting the right person. So it can take months and months, first of all. And if you're unemployed, it can take longer than that. So you are afraid of upsetting the apple cart. Right. And so you don't. You talk yourself out of negotiating quite easily. You say, I think this is good enough. And and here's why. I think I mentioned this in my book, but it's about the personal stakes. Some of my clients, executives, are negotiating $1 million deals every day for their company. Some of my clients are recruiters or recruiting leaders who are on the other side of the negotiating table. They know how this works.
Right.
But now that it's their life, it's their house, it's their car payment, it's their
kids' college, it's their
all this. It's the stakes are very personal. Now that it's their deal, now they're much more worried. It would be the same stakes as if I were a salesperson and I went into my boss's office, the sales director, and I'm saying, hey, I got this great opportunity with this customer. We've been chasing them for a while. And the boss leans across the desk and he says, John, screw this up and you're fired. And that's kind of how it feels, right? When you're a job seeker, if you screw it up, it's not that you're fired, but you don't get the job. It's the same sort of thing.
Right.
And that's why. And so I've had clients that were getting ready to leave hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table at that offer stage. And then you work them through the process and they're able to get that money without putting the offer at risk. It's astounding how much money people leave behind.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling. I was just going to say, because I was looking at some questions last week, put something on LinkedIn and asked them what are their biggest fears or biggest questions, because I told them I was going to be talking with you. That was one of them, was really leaving something behind, but also the fear, like you said, that's the number one thing of, oh, great, I can't blow this. Everything is on the line for this. So, negotiating, I would definitely hire a negotiation coach. Why risk it, So here's one of the questions. I got some really good ones, so I'm just going to read them. I have my questions written, but I was like, oh, these are really good too. So what's a leading indicator that the conversation is going the way you want?
So I call those buying signals.
Okay.
So when you're interviewing, things like that, and people start to visualize that you're already on their team or you're already there, and they start to say things like, when you get here, we're going to do this. I think that is a huge buying signal.
For sure.
If they start signaling that an offer is coming. They want to refine your offer requirements, things like that at the finish line, right before maybe that signals that they're getting an offer approved.
Oh, good.
But
Okay.
the biggest buying signals that I think I see when I'm being interviewed or when my clients are being interviewed is they start to visualize the person already in the job, and they start talking as if it's that. Like, we've got this upcoming conference in 6 months, and you could really help me out with that. In fact, when we're there together, we should do this.
I mean, that's huge. That's a huge signal.
Yeah.
When they are talking about that in the future tense, that's a giant,
if they start to sell you too, if they stop asking you questions, and they start to sell you on how great their company is or how great their opportunity is. If you got an hour-long interview and 15 minutes in, they stop asking you questions and the rest of the time is convincing you to join, that's a big one. Usually there's a little bit of selling time built in, so don't misread this one. But if it's lopsided like that, it's a very good sign.
Yeah. Okay. Another one I have is, how can you double down on that momentum in the moment? So probably, once you're getting the buying signals from them, how do you double down on that to keep that going?
Okay. So when you get the buying signals, I will say the question's framed up as momentum. I'd like to rephrase that as leverage. So leverage is the thing that you want to build throughout the process. It's a balance of power. It's like a teeter-totter. And when you enter into the process, the teeter-totter shifted toward the company because no one's fallen in love with you yet. And now that the hiring team has started to fall in love with you and you're sensing that's the case and there's momentum in your direction, the teeter-totter shifts to you, and now the balance of power is to you. So how do you double down on that, make the most of it? I think you should tease competition throughout the process, but especially here. You should at every step, when they start talking about scheduling you for a second round of interviews or a third round, you know how it goes sometimes. Companies have these stupid long interview processes. Right? You need to say, okay, I'm happy to schedule that third round of interview. I just wanted to let you know, though, I'm in an active job search, and I've got final interviews next week with 2 other companies.
Love it.
Now, when you start saying that, it does a bunch of things for you. It adds to the leverage that you have because now other companies want you and they don't want you to be taken away. They like you. They don't want to go back to the beginning of the process.
So it just really starts that,
So this is a good double down. Like you can use this competitive pressure to get them to move faster. And if companies really like you, they will actually bend the rules of the universe to interview you. They'll have somebody interview you while they're on vacation or while they're traveling in Tokyo.
Oh, wow.
They will sometimes they'll cut entire rounds of interviews out. They'll say, well, maybe we don't have the time. If we want this person, we're going to have to put an offer before somebody else does.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers the question.
Has that ever backfired? Because I was just wondering, I know I would probably, maybe if I was a recruiter and they're like, well, I'm talking with a couple other companies. Have they ever been like, have you ever heard any stories where maybe a recruiter was like, you know what, that's fine, go ahead, or, kind of, has it ever gone the opposite way, I wonder? Probably not, but maybe.
Well, occasionally it does, but if it does, it means they're not that into you.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be.
Right. So they were just stringing you along. You were filler in their interview slate.
Okay.
Maybe the first round wasn't all that strong. So this can be a way for you to test their interest as well. But if they are interested, they're going to be upset that you are interviewing with somebody else. It's not going to count against you. In fact, it's just going to make you more interesting. Everybody knows that strong talent doesn't stay on the market for very long. Now, we've got a weak market right now where I've seen strong talent stay on the market for way too long.
Yeah.
But
I know,
still in our guts somewhere, we think if there's 2 or 3 companies chasing this person, they must have something really good going on for that to happen, especially in this market. Everybody wants to hire the superstar. So that's what a superstar looks like.
That just makes total sense. Love that. So why don't know your worth tactics work in these high stakes negotiations?
I think it's because it's easy to debunk those sort of tactics. That's the most common advice that I see out there in the world. And one of the reasons I started Salary Coach in the first place, I kept seeing this bad advice go out in front of everyone. And I know it's bad advice because I've been the receiver of that bad advice as the recruiter. I've had candidates come at me and say, John, I've done my research. I went over to payscale.com, or I went over to salary.com,
Right.
or I looked on Glassdoor or something like that. And this is what I think I'm worth because this is what the salary survey says I'm worth.
Right.
And it's very easy for me to debunk that. So as a recruiter, I would say, well, I appreciate that you've done all that research. That's amazing. However, we've also done our research as a company. We know which companies we specifically compete against for talent. We've benchmarked them. We've taken that data, we've put it into our consideration for what we're going to pay on this role.
Mm-hmm.
And so appreciate all that research, but this is what we're paying.
Yeah.
And it's just too easy to yank the rug out from under somebody. And they go from a position of confidence. I can see it on their face. They were confident and now they're deflated. They don't know what to do in that situation. So I always advise people to invoke competition instead. Instead of saying, I've done my research and this is what I'm worth, you should say, I'm in an active job search. I'm talking with several other companies, and the range of pay I'm discussing with them is between this, and these are for comparable roles. They can never argue with what somebody else is telling you.
So what do you do if, so let's say you kind of made that up because you just are trying to add that competitive leverage there. But so, I mean, and what do you do recruiters or hiring, do they typically say, well, can you tell us who they are? Who are these companies that you're looking at? I mean, what if you're just, fibbing?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that
anybody. I should say it's confidential.
Fib. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that anybody fib. But instead, when you're early on and you haven't had those conversations yet, you can refer to the salaries that other companies are posting in their requisitions and stuff like that. And you can start off just like we said with this is what the market is for me. This is what I think the market is for me. So my range is between here and here. You start off with that. And then when the first company says, "But this is what we're paying," now you have one company and one data point that you can draw on to create your range. And you continue to have those conversations until you have a better feel for how the real market is. And so the first 2 or 3 conversations are going to be data gathering conversations more than anything else. But you should say, now your question is, do they ever ask you what companies? And if so, how do you respond to that? Yeah, I always say, who I'm talking to, I need to keep private right now because I don't want to let the lions loose. I'm discussing with several different companies. As I get further down, maybe if we develop strong interest in each other, maybe I can tell you who you're competing against, but probably not. I'm probably not going to do that. But I'll tell you right now, it's 3 different companies, and they're all in the automotive manufacturing industry, something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
you can be a little bit cagey. You can, without giving the name of the company, you can give away the industry.
Right.
You can say there's one healthcare company, there's one that's not for profit, and there's one that's tech manufacturing.
Yeah. So you can kind of give them a little bit without. Okay.
That will usually satisfy.
Yeah. And one of the questions was, what if I don't have any other offers? That's why I was saying, but I always, I like the salary range and the market research, and this is kind of where I think that I'm at. Yeah.
Let me get into that for a sec, because most people feel that way. I don't have other offers. Like, the ideal situation is you have another offer.
Yeah.
But you need to work really hard in your job search to keep your pipeline full. You need to be having conversations, even if they're just networking conversations going on all of the time, so that you have a steady stream of phone calls and stuff like that. That way, when you say, I'm talking to several other companies and it's between A and B, that's not a fib,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You are doing that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to invoke another offer. You have to invoke that you're in the process with several other companies.
Right.
So you need to get,
and you
need to
should be
be
anyway.
applying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of job seekers kind of putting all their eggs in one basket and all their hopes in this one job. And, we always say, keep going, keep looking, don't,
Yeah,
don't
that's
just hope on this.
excellent
So,
advice, Erin.
yeah. So okay, let me ask you this. How important is mindset in negotiation, and how can someone build that confidence to negotiate, effectively? I mean, that's a huge part.
It is a huge part. And I think in my book and in my practice, I give some scripts for people to use,
Oh, good.
and that's helpful. So
Mhm.
when they're in the phone screen process, they can look to see what the right script is. They can try and test these scripts until they find their own voice in them. And that's what I want. You can use my words if that's comfortable for you, but shift into your own language if that works.
Yeah.
After you've done that for a little bit, you've had 2 or 3 phone screens and you have tried this and you realize the world isn't falling apart. I was afraid it might. That gives you the confidence that the salary coach method works and that it's a safe path for you to go forward with. Once you feel like you're on steady ground, like it gets
Yeah.
a lot better. Having a coach in your corner too, like if you were to hire me as a coach, we could rehearse before every session. So with my coaching clients, some of them call me right before a phone screen, and we spend a little bit of time
Yeah.
reviewing what's to say and what's likely to come at them. Same thing before interviews. We do debriefs after the interviews. Having a partner in the journey takes a lot of the fear out of it.
For sure. For sure. I mean, yeah, and just having that person, you, to kind of lean on and say, okay, this is where we're at. What should I say now, is, I think, would take so much off of it and build your confidence, because, you do have that thinking partner. What advice do you have for people negotiating kind of in emotionally charged situations, or, maybe higher stakes? And what do you think about that, where emotions are really, high?
I think emotions are always going to be high in this because the stakes are high. Now, the easiest pay discussions in the world are when you've got multiple offers and they're all good. And it's like, if this one goes away, I'm not losing sleep over it. That's not the usual situation for most people.
Right.
They're going to get one offer and they've got another company maybe they're talking to that maybe they're in the second round interview process or something like that. And so they are concerned that this one could get away, and that heightens the emotions. So, what I would suggest, first of all, is here's a big tip, and I hope the folks here are listening. 80% of people don't negotiate. That means that they take the offer when it's extended. Now, the most power and leverage that you'll ever have during this entire process is that time between when the offer is extended to you and the time you say yes. Most people waste all this leverage by saying yes immediately. Don't do that. That's a big mistake.
So what
So
should they do?
the question is, how do you manage the emotions of all of this? All right. So first thing you should do when you get an offer is say, I'm so grateful for this offer. I'm so excited about the possibility of working for you on your team, doing that great thing that we talked about. I'd like a couple of days to review this with my family and to think about it. I'm going to analyze this. I'll probably come back with some questions if that's okay. And I'll get back to you within a couple of days with those questions. And, asking questions is always okay.
Yeah.
Companies want you to ask questions. Asking questions is not putting the offer at risk. So if your emotions are high, imagine this. You're just going to buy a couple of days of time. You're going to analyze the offer to see what might be missing, and then you're going to start asking questions. And those questions should be framed up like this. Would it be possible to, or is it possible if we, and you're beginning to engage in a collaborative conversation through questions. So let's say that the pay is a little bit less than you want, or you want to probe to see if there's more pay available, you could ask,
Right.
would it be possible to improve this salary? Now, you're not asking for more money, you're just asking if it's possible.
That's fair.
You want to know, like, your other questions could be like, how does the bonus program work? Can you tell me how the bonus is calculated and when it's paid? And if we're here in the middle of the year, let's say it's July, it's the middle of the year, and I take this job and the first bonus is paid in February. Is that first bonus going to be prorated based on my month of hire? And you kind of want to ask them a bunch of questions, and it's useful actually if they say, no, we can't do that, or no, that's not possible. Because as soon as they say no to you in a question like that, they start to feel like their offer is a little bit deficient in some way. And if they really want to hire you, and of course, they want you to say yes, or they wouldn't have offered you the job.
Right.
During this process, you're trying to show them the path to yes. And you're working that out with them. So through this question and answer process, you understand that this is possible, this isn't. Maybe the health insurance isn't available for 6 months, so I guess that means I have to carry COBRA for 6 months, and that's $1,700 a month. That's this much. And it's like, would it be possible to put me on the health insurance on the first day? The answer is no, we can't do that. It's policy. It's like, okay, well, I understand that. Wouldn't want you to change your policy for me, but that's really expensive for me. If I say yes, I have to carry COBRA for 6 months.
Right. And that's fair.
This much.
These are all fair questions.
Would it be possible to include a signing bonus to offset that for me? And you see what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Right. This is the technique. This is
and it's like you said, it's a very collaborative. You're asking them, you're not lunging at them with your demands. You're just asking them in a very polite way. Yeah. I mean, who would,
exactly
or turn it down? Huh?
This will tell you. So most people think like a counter offer is a dangerous game of chicken where you're just saying, all right, thanks for the offer. Make the salary $30,000 more, give me a $25,000 signing bonus, and we can be done. Now, without all of that collaboration ahead of time, you have no idea if they can even do that. And sometimes they'll come back with a counter offer that's a compromise, but that's a very risky way of approaching it.
Right.
And sometimes it's like you get one possible outcome of that is, no, we can't do that. In fact, we're rescinding our offer. Bye. But
right, and that is the worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's you don't want to do that.
Scenario, they rescind it, but at least you know.
Envisioning that outcome is what makes people so emotionally wound up. They want to avoid that.
They're pre-planning the worst case scenario.
If you get an offer and you say to yourself, I think this offer is good enough, I think I'm just going to take it. You're talking yourself out of negotiating. You're talking yourself out of the stuff that we just reviewed. And you're getting ready to leave money on the table if you find yourself talking to yourself that way. So be really careful. That's the emotions steering you onto the safe, ultra safe path that 80% of people take. And, if you left $10,000 in salary on the table, that's $10,000 a year every year that you're working there. If you work there for 5 years, that would be $50,000 plus on the table. And that salary figure becomes the floor for promotions, for raises, for the next job after, for everything else. So be really careful to explore what's still on the table for you.
Very true. That's great advice. So I have a question that, it really is true. When I talk to women, this is especially difficult for them. I don't know why, but it is for so many women that I talk to, and I'm sure you've encountered this over and over through the years. Why is it so hard for women to negotiate? Why is it so hard for us? I've talked about it with other, career coaches, and, we kind of come up with the same answer, but it is really difficult for women to have that voice to say, no, this is what I'm worth, or this is what I would like. So, I mean, what have you found that you see as like one of the biggest reasons, and how to overcome that?
Half of my clients, coaching clients, are women. And it wasn't that way initially. My first 8 coaching clients were men. And I thought, don't women want this help? Maybe they don't want a male coach. I was just second guessing myself all the way through this. But eventually, like, it turned out I was just rolling snake eyes all the time. And eventually women came and women stayed in the practice. And now it's about 50-50. So as I was researching my book, I asked an interesting question. I don't think this actually got into the book. I asked men, who do you think has the advantage in negotiating pay, men or women? And I asked women the same question. And I got very different answers. Most of the men, I'd say about 3/4 of the men, said they thought men had the advantage. But a quarter of the men said they felt that women had the advantage. And my next question was, why? Why do you think women have the advantage?
Right.
And they pointed out the idea that as a man, I could never be a woman. And some companies are really looking to add female leaders. They're looking to add female technologists. So they have an advantage that I don't have. They might be rare in that company or rare in that industry. I can never have that. So that's leverage. Men envisioned that women could use their gender actually as leverage to get a better offer.
Okay.
In that situation. So if you're a woman and you're interviewing for a company that has 18 male executives and 3 female executives, it might be that you have that leverage. You just don't know you have it. So when I asked women the same question, almost all of the women felt that men had the advantage. And when I asked them why is that? And they said, well, men are more willing to take risks. Men are more willing to be disruptive. Men are more willing to do this. And as I asked follow-up questions, what I found was that women were far more concerned about preserving the relationships on the way in than men were.
Interesting.
They were worried. They were worried that if they negotiated, they might damage the relationship with their boss or with somebody in HR that was going to be an important partner later or something. So there's this fear of rocking the boat. And so there's also this concern from women that if they are assertive, that they will be viewed as aggressive.
Yeah, I was going to say something that starts with B, rhymes with which. But no, right.
So these are legit concerns.
Yeah.
That fortunately for everyone listening, if you're a woman and you feel that way and it's a concern, the salary coach method is highly collaborative. In fact, it's going to strengthen your relationship with your future boss if you collaborate in the offer process. And you don't have to be assertive or aggressive. You have to stand up for yourself to some degree in this process. But if you do it in a collaborative way, you're going to build a relationship and not damage it in the process. So the good news is you can be a nice person and still get everything that you need out of the negotiation process. You don't have to become an aggressive personality to do this.
Yeah. So we're about nearing the end. Tell me about Salary Coach, and also how does somebody get in touch with you if they want to hire you and have you help them with this tricky topic?
Excellent question. I like that question a lot. So there's besides the book, I put together something called the Salary Coach Academy.
I just gotta say, I love this book. This was a great, I was so excited to get it, and it's an easy read. I have so many highlighted pages. Anyways, it's great. And I mean, like I said, I was kind of thinking of my kids when I was reading it, because I'm highlighting it so I can remind them, but it's, even though they're younger, but I mean, it's definitely for everyone. I mean, it kind of hits all these things that we've been talking about. So anyway, sorry about that, but tell me again about Salary Coach.
Yeah, my goal in the book was to demystify the process, because there's so much mystery around what you should do here, and so much, weird knowledge, people who aren't recruiters or aren't doing this every day, giving the advice. So I wanted to put it all in one place. And so the book is kind of a summary of the Salary Coach method. And the Salary Coach Academy goes deeper than the book. That is a place where you get bite-sized video lessons of me teaching what to say at every single step of the process. So there's right now almost 40 video lessons in the Academy, and it's growing all the time. If you're an Academy member, you can send me a message to say, hey, could you do a video on this? Because I'm encountering that. And if I get that idea from 2 or 3 people, I'll say, okay, let me do a video, and I stick it in the Academy. So it's kind of a growing thing, and that's salarycoachacademy.com. You can find that there. In January of 2025, I'm going to be launching a group coaching process, which is kind of neat.
Nice.
Where I'll have office hours that people can drop into so they can get coaching in a group setting, and also some camaraderie from other like fire breathing job seekers, referral networks from those seekers and stuff like that.
To get plugged into that. People that are in that same boat, I think is so helpful too,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice.
So to get plugged into that, or if you want to find out what it would be like to be coached personally and privately, you can hit me up on email at john@salary.coach. That's the easiest way.
John@salary.coach. Okay.
Yes.
I love it. Well, this has been amazing. I do have one last question that we always ask all of our guests is, what is something outside of work that you do, maybe a hobby or something that you're very passionate about, maybe that, no one really knows about you, or, something that you really enjoy?
Probably something that's unique is next year, I've set a goal to leave the United States and live in developing countries for the next couple of years at least. So I'm going to be selling everything I own and living out of a suitcase. First year, I'll be living in 5 or 6 different countries that are developing countries. And year 2 and beyond, I'll probably pick 1 or 2 places to settle into. But
what will you be doing? I mean, what is motivating this? Interesting.
Well, built a business salary coach that I can do from anywhere in the world.
True.
Most of my coaching sessions are online, either on the phone or in a Zoom call, just like this. And so I'm helping people everywhere. Most of my clients are in North America, but I find a different energy in the developing world, where people are desperately poor, but the family structures are really strong almost because of that. There's a different spiritual energy in those places that I really, really like.
Sure.
So I'm an adventurer. I like doing things that most people would never dream of doing. The story value, the experience value is something that I greatly treasure. So I want to do this.
Well, that sounds amazing. Are you going to be talking about it on LinkedIn or giving us little snippets of your adventures?
Yeah, probably. Once I kick it off, I'll be vlogging from different places. Hey, it's John from Salary Coach coming to you from Hanoi or Mexico City or something like that. It'll be fun.
Gutsy. You're pretty gutsy. I don't know if I would do that. That's so cool though. Wow. Well, again, it was great having you here and really digging into this topic that most people hate or are just plain not sure of how to even start. So I hope that our listeners will reach out to you or at least get your book, Act Your Wage by John Gates. I got mine, I think, next day, so order it. But thanks again for joining us and teaching us all how to negotiate confidently.
Thanks, Erin. It's a start. If anybody needs more help, I'm here and I'm always in your corner.
Thanks so much. Thanks again for listening to the Office Latte podcast. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at Executive Resumes, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Office Latte Podcast. If you have any career questions or conversations you want us to talk about, send them to officelattepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll answer them in an upcoming show. Have a great week and stay caffeinated.